Welcome to another Photo Mish Mash, episode 13. I'm Toby.
And I'm Christina.
And this podcast has blemishes, but we're not going to Photoshop them out. That's the title.
Okay.
That's what she always says. Okay or no. Let's start with the week in review. So the first thing I want to mention is that I got my 70D back this week from Canon. For those of you following along and watching, center focus point issue, sent it off to Canon, and they said, I should grab the little piece of paper, said center focus point not adjusted for best quality, adjusted it electronically. It's, those kind of statements are a little hard to decipher, but it basically seems for me to say they looked at it, ran some calibration software or testing, found that it wasn't up to standards, made some electronic adjustments, which makes me wonder is this something firmware could do?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking.
And sent it back to me. But it's not better. It doesn't seem to be better. I have not done the complete and full tests that I did before I sent it off and found that it had the issue that folks were talking about. But I have done enough testing to say that I don't really think it's fixed. I did the micro-focusing adjustment, autofocus micro adjustments. I need to do a tutorial on how to do that with a 70D. It really isn't too hard. A lot of button presses.
But you need to have a calibration tool.
Nah, you don't really.
Well, if you want to go around and play around with it.
Right, that's right. It's more tedious if you don't have some kind of calibration tool.
Right. I mean, you can use a ruler.
You can, yeah.
That has millimeters.
Or you can just do trial and error. And that's basically what I
did.
did.
You need a tripod. I think at tutorials.
So I'll try to get one of those out soon. And I will have some more, concrete information to share with you all. Using any of those other points than the center focus, it's fine. It's great. Live view, God, I love this camera in live view. I use that often, but I recognize that doesn't work for everybody.
Right. Yeah, I mean.
And one of the things we're going to come back to and discuss tonight is focus points in general. There's a lot of confusion about focus points. And I was having a good conversation with a coworker earlier this week that made me think two things. One, I love a real-time conversation with people, and I'm springing this on you, but you nervous?
I don't even know what's coming.
I
didn't even know there was anything coming.
I would love to do a live version of this occasionally. And have people watching, commenting, interacting with us as we're doing this, because I have a lot of great conversations with you all through the comments, through messages, sometimes chat. Some of you figure out how to get a hold of me, and then I can't resist the answer. Oh, I shouldn't say that, because no, I go to bed. I do go to bed and stop answering people at some point. But to have that live back and forth, where they say something about focus points, and I say, oh, this is what you mean, and they're like, no, I mean this, and I'm like, oh, you think this, and here's how it actually works, and it's great, and I think it's an efficient way of learning.
Sure, I'm up for that.
Nice. It's good. I thought you would be. So look for that at some point in the future. Leave a comment down below, capital letters LIVE, if you want us to do a live show at some point. And then we would put out this very polished, finished version the next day like we do now, because it's always so well polished.
Yep.
I had to put the last episode up 3 times. I'm not saying the first time was my fault.
Yeah. I mean,
the second time, though, was.
But it wasn't because we recorded too many things
we had
that
too
needed
much
to
power.
Be cut out. Yeah, it was the software that botched it up, wasn't it?
I think it was YouTube.
Right, sure.
We went psychedelic.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Moving on.
So we'll talk about focus points more in a minute. So the other thing I want to review from this past week is, do we sound better?
Huh?
Do we sound better? New mics. So one of the things that I have wanted to upgrade in this podcast, we talk about photography, talk about video. One of the things that's really important is audio. And some of you have been very patient and said, your audio could be a little bit better, especially the times where I've screwed up and I've had to go to the backup audio. It's bearable, but it's not what I wanted. So we got these nice little lav mics. These are the Shure's SM93s. They were not particularly cheap, but you want to sound good?
Yep.
You need to pay money.
Another thing that I particularly speak pretty quietly, so in comparison to you.
Yep.
So it's nice to have more even kind of levels.
That's a good point too. And so having dual lav mics, we're running these into a Zoom H4n. Also on my short to-do list, or my near-term to-do list, is to write up a little post about microphone options. For a long time I've been recommending that, is it Olympus? I don't even remember now.
I have no idea.
The lav mic that we use with the incredibly long cord, the little battery that goes in it.
Oh, right. I don't know what that was, but I remember.
And that's like $20. It's, you know, went right into the camera. It needed a good bit of post-processing to sound good, but it was possible, and for $20. So I'll list out these options and give little rundowns on them. But this is nice, and hopefully this is sounding good. We actually used it on the critique last night.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, that's a good segue right into talking about the critique. We did slightly differently this week. We had to split it because so many of you, but I want to kind of reward those folks that are really participating and following along on Facebook and Flickr, and ask you all to post a link over. Many of you did that, and we critiqued those in 2 parts. And you want to talk a little bit about what you decided in part 1?
So we were discussing this image, and it came up, or the idea came up to do a kind of little, or to assign a little homework assignment of symmetry. So if you're watching and you participate in the Flickr group and submit pictures, this week's assignment, we're going to prioritize pictures.
And it's 2 weeks too. I made it longer.
Okay. We're going to prioritize pictures that show symmetry. So get out there and shoot some very symmetrical pictures. And please, and you know, go back if you're interested. Go back and look for the part where I talk about symmetry in the critique, because we go into a little bit more depth about what we mean about symmetry, and it's not, you know, super black and white. It's a little bit more open.
Wait, is the assignment black and white or symmetry?
Black and white in terms of like it's not any certain way.
It's up for them to interpret?
To interpret, yeah. It's open for interpretation. Yep. So, yeah.
Okay, and I'll put a link right down below to a little post I did about symmetry, which does link to where Christina talks about symmetry. And we'll talk more about that. Yep. And one of the other things that, from part 1 of that critique, this is episode 7 we're talking about, we looked at Jay's St. Mary's Churchyard picture. That had a good bit of distortion in it. Right. With shooting with a wider angle lenses. And I did a video a couple weeks ago about what it does to your face and how it just makes my forehead giant when you're shooting with a wider angle lens. But one of the things, and you know, I didn't notice this at first, and I think beginners don't notice this either, is that it's very easy to get distortion of buildings when shooting with a lens, especially often because we're on the ground and the building's tall above us. You look, especially when you start to crop, and you watch, the sides of the image, of course, are straight, but the walls or the building may go off in a V shape, and there's a lot of distortion. And I did a Lightroom video this week, about 20 minutes long. I really want to get more targeted videos out. That is a goal of mine. So again, those of you who watch 20 minutes worth of Lightroom stuff, it's full of good stuff, but I'd also like to give people an option who say, I want to correct distortion in Lightroom. How do I do that? And give them a 2-minute video on how to do that. She appreciates the shorter videos. And I showed how to correct for that, and Lightroom does a pretty amazing job. So we'll talk, we'll be showing that more in the future. But those are 2 things that I wanted to pull out of this past week's critique. Symmetry assignment, which is exciting because many of you have been asking for assignments as well, and correcting distortion. But there's also how to fix scenic pictures in there as well, and that's very exciting as well. So now, we announced last week that the giveaway was over. Chris won the tripod. It's going to be winging its way across to England tomorrow because that's where he lives. So congratulations to Chris. And we're announcing a new giveaway. Do you know what it is?
I have no idea. I didn't even know that we were announcing anything today.
You did, because last episode. And since this giveaway is over, That must mean...
So there's another giveaway?
Yeah, and it's starting next week. I said, we're going to have a new, and you're like,
yeah, but
giveaway?
We always keep it very vague
Oh.
So they watch everything you put up.
So you want to see some magic?
That's our secret.
You want to see magic about this giveaway?
Sure.
Watch this. Look. It's a $50 gift card to Lumoid. Right there in my hand.
Oh.
Now, this would be great. If I had a video intern who did all my editing, if I didn't have to do my editing myself, I'd make it really hard for him. I'd be like, look at this giveaway card.
Now you just made it hard for yourself.
No! Dang it. So this is really exciting. These are the fine folks at Lumoid. They are a camera and lens rental agency, but it's more than that because you can rent to own, which is really nice. And we've talked about renting for ages. Way back when we did our wedding videos last year, a series of kind of help people think about how to set up for weddings and shoot weddings. We talk about renting gear. And we talked last week, somebody said, is an SL1 good enough to shoot a wedding? And the answer is yes, you can do that. But you are going to be able to produce better images if you are using gear that does better in low light. And you're going to have more flexible options. And renting is a really kind of cost-effective way to bring in gear for things that you need.
Yeah, and it's, you can build it into the cost, into your pricing, and it's a relatively low expense. So, I mean, what would it cost to rent like a wedding kit that Lumoid offers? Like $300-400?
Oh, less than that.
Even less than that.
Yeah,
so,
for the weekend. Prices start as low as like $10 a day for an item.
Well, the point is that it's gives you a lot of flexibility to offer better quality and to build it into your pricing so that you are being still compensated enough, but you're not blowing or not blowing, but you're not spending thousands of dollars on camera equipment, and you can still offer that kind of quality. So,
and it's even better than renting, because some people might be saying, well, why don't I just start putting that money towards saving so that I own it and I don't have to rent? Lumoid will let you put a percentage of the cost of renting towards buying that gear down the road, which is nice.
Yeah.
It really works. So $50 is a gift certificate, $50 for you to rent something at Lumoid. Now, some of you might think, I'm not a wedding photographer, I don't care. Look, I did the video on the 2x extender. Maybe you want to dabble with some
wildlife photography.
Not only do they have the extender, but they have some big zoom lenses or a macro lens. That's one of those lenses that I think a lot of people want, and maybe just renting it a couple weekends a year is enough to satisfy your desire. Maybe you'll rent it and find out that you loved it, but you don't need to own it. Or maybe you'll rent it and be like, this is absolutely the next lens I need to purchase. I mean, there's just so many benefits. So it's really exciting to be able to give away. It's going to be a 1 week long contest. There will be a link right down below this video soon. I hope I can get that done tonight. You just enter to win. Very similar to the tripod giveaway. And we'll announce a winner next week. Lumoid, $50 gift certificate. Thank you. Exciting. Moving on. A discussion.
About what?
Focus points.
Focus points.
I think there's a lot of confusion about focus points.
Okay.
Or do we want to do news? No, we're talking about this. We'll do news after discussion. You look at these cameras, and oftentimes there's kind of like your headline bullet point features of cameras.
Yeah.
5D Mark III, 61 focus points.
Mm-hmm.
SL1, 9, maybe 11. I think it's 9 focus points. Nikon D9300, 39 focus points. Hope I'm getting that right. That sounds way more impressive than 9.
Yeah.
And what a lot of people think is when we're talking about focus points, they think it means the number of places that can be in focus in the image. So, for instance, with the 5, or let's take brands out of it. Let's say a camera with 50 focus points, 50 points within that frame could be in focus.
I think the assumption here is that it increases your depth of field. Your depth of field is much larger. So if we have a person here and like a building like 50 feet away that needs to be in focus, then the assumption is that the more focus points the camera has, that it's more is going to be in focus. But that's actually controlled by your aperture, not by the focus points.
Yes. Now, does it matter? So did we just basically say it doesn't mean that more is going to be in focus the more points?
Well, right. So more is not going to be in focus, but you can use those focus points to aid you in creating a picture. So you can move them around to focus on something without having to change your composition. You can move around and select a focus point so that you don't have to focus, use a center focus point to focus and then recompose and then completely change your plane of focus and then have some things be out of focus. So it gives you a lot more flexibility with composing an image, and yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much the purpose of the multiple focus points.
Or it gives you photographing subjects moving across the frame. If you're letting the camera pick the focus point, then the camera has a wider view of the frame and can say, oh, I should be focusing on this object moving. I'll use this point as it's going across, then I'll switch to this point, this point. So to say it succinctly, the camera can only be focused at one point within that range. Now there are some focus modes where it seems like it's an area, but really it's just one point within that area still, even if you're not seeing the individual points. And as Christina said, your aperture controls how much is in focus. I almost want to repeat it because I think it's confusing. Can I repeat it?
You can do whatever you want.
It doesn't matter how many focus points you have. When that camera focuses and beeps to let you know that it's in focus, there is only one point that is actually in focus. Now, I think cameras make it even more confusing because I've seen sometimes where you let it choose the area, there'll be multiple green blocks that'll be like bloop, bloop.
Right.
So what is it saying there?
Well, it's saying that that's the subject. So the camera makes the assumption that your subject needs to take up those many focus points, but uses all of those focus points to focus on that particular subject. But it's, well, I guess what I was going to say was that you probably shouldn't rely on that automatic mode in the camera, because then it's going to probably most likely not pick the subject that you want to focus on, because cameras don't actually know what we want to photograph. It's just going to pick whatever has the most contrast or looks like a face, or, you know, so while they are sort of smarter and will work in certain situations, in most situations you're probably better off just making the decision yourself. Also, there are some cameras that have expanding focus points. So you have the center focus point, which is, or not the center focus point, but for
a focus point.
A focus point, and then it kind of spreads the, or the sensitivity spreads to the outer focus points, the focus points that are right next to that main focus point. So if your subject moves or you move slightly, it's a little bit smarter and it knows to focus in that general area so that you don't actually lose that shot, and so that, you know, whatever you're trying to focus on is actually in focus. So yeah, I mean, there's many reasons why having more focus points is a benefit, but one of the reasons is not that it's going to increase your depth of field or how many things are in focus in terms of, you know, like distance within the frame. So
nicely said. Yep. And I think I just want to repeat that other point you said. I was going to say that. I love that you said that. That we strongly recommend you picking your focus point, because then you are choosing because you know best what your subject is. And I have seen multiple times, time and time again, and I have heard from many of you all that, you know, I took this picture and there's my oh, great picture the other day. Guys like, what's wrong with my camera? It's broken. I took a picture of a guy sitting on a bench and he showed it to me. Guy on the bench, completely blurry. Background, sharp focus. The camera, for whatever reason, didn't feel like that his subject filled enough of the frame to decide that it was the subject and focused back there on somebody else. And you got to pick. And my coworker said to me, you know, one of the reasons I went with the 70D is because I thought it'd be a little bit smarter about picking focus point. And
it's hard to say. I mean, I don't think...
Faster, more accurate.
Right.
As far as the point that it decides to focus on, but still that brain in there is just not as good as your brain.
Right.
And
they are machines after all,
Yep.
and not very... I mean, they're good machines for taking images, but in terms of
thinking
the
for
more
themselves.
Artistic parts, you have to decide on your own. That's what makes you, you know, the creator of the image.
Right. And now we're not saying it's always going to pick the wrong focus.
No.
But you run the risk
of
it picking the wrong focus.
So
maybe even 9 out of 10 times that it would be smart enough. But if that 10th picture is a critical one, that's bad noise. All right. Wow, did we blow through that? All right. Talk through that fairly quickly.
Okay.
I think this might be shorter tonight.
All right. I'm down for that.
We talked a little bit about distortion.
Yes.
In the recap. Do we want to say anything more about distortion?
I don't think so. I think we've covered a lot of distortion.
If you're interested in what wide-angle lenses do to people's faces, watch my video from a few weeks ago. If you're interested a little bit in what very wide, ultra-wide UWA, ultra-wide-angle lenses do to buildings, watch. But you don't even, I was shooting with a 50mm on the 70D a few weeks ago, and you know, sometimes if you're shooting up, you'll get that distortion. So it doesn't even have to be a wide-angle lens to get that distortion.
It's just easier to correct if you have a 50 versus an ultra-wide-angle.
More of a normal length telephoto, or more of a normal length lens.
Yeah.
Somebody asked, we'll put this in the discussion too, somebody asked about having a backup camera. We mentioned that a few weeks ago when I talked, and someone said, is it really necessary to have a backup camera?
Well, it depends on the situation. So did they elaborate?
Well, they just said, you know, yeah, they said, I'm not a professional photographer. I'm just taking pictures of kids and going on vacation and stuff. Do I need a backup camera?
Well, it depends on... Well, when we say backup camera, we don't necessarily mean the exact same camera that you're shooting with, especially if you're not somebody who, you know, who's running a photography business and relies on their income or photography, you know, make their income through photography. So you can have like a point and shoot as a backup camera if your main camera is a DSLR, or have like, you know, a more affordable point and shoot if you do have like a point and shoot as your main camera. So it depends really on how much you feel like you run the risk of having your camera, you know, be dropped or fail on you, or it's a tough call if, you know, if
I
you're...
don't think it is.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's
a personal call.
choice. Yeah, unless you're like a wedding photographer, or you are a portrait photographer, or somebody that's, you know, you don't want to waste people's time basically if your camera fails. So you kind of do owe it to them to have a backup. However, if you're on vacation, like, yeah, it would be nice to have a backup. But, you know, like, your backup could also be your phone. Like, you could just use your phone if your phone has a decent enough camera. So it depends on the situation. So.
Okay. Yeah. I'd say that the clear, I mean, it is a personal choice, but what clearly separates the need from a backup camera from it's a personal choice is whether or not you're getting paid to take those pictures, and if you're going to have moments that are not, what's the word? Recreatable.
Right.
You know, a bride and groom's, or a wedding.
Yeah, so on a portrait shoot, you know, you don't want to waste people's time, but at the same time, you can say, all right, well, let's reschedule, and, you know, I'll give you something to make up for the fact that, you know, we just wasted your time. But, yeah, with weddings, you can't do that.
Right. So you're like, oh, my camera just broke. Can we get together again next weekend with the cake decorator?
Invite everyone back.
Pick the cake decorator.
Yeah, I don't know.
Just get one of them ice cream cakes.
Let's invite everyone back.
Right.
Pay for the venue again.
I'm sure the venue is still available next weekend in the middle of summer. Yeah. Okay. So I just wanted to cover that. And then we had a question on Flickr. This isn't reader questions. This is discussion still. That's why we call it Mish Mash.
Yeah.
Keeper rate.
Oh, right.
So
okay.
I'll describe to you all what a keeper rate is. If you don't know, many of you probably know. It's basically the percentage, the number of photos that you, out of all of the ones you take, that you decide are good enough to keep. And what keep means is different for different people. For one person, their keeper rate might be the pictures that they decide are good enough to put on something like 500 pics or Flickr. For somebody else, it might mean print. For somebody else, it might mean deliver to a client. Or, yeah.
So for us, for weddings, the keeper rate is between 20 and 25% of all images that we shoot, which, yeah, it's actually not that high. We shoot quite a bit, and then we don't really use a whole lot of those images. So I would like to increase my keeper rate. That's one of my goals.
Why? Let's be obvious, or I mean, might not be obvious. Why do you want to increase your keeper rate?
Because it will cut down my culling time. I'll spend a lot less time culling. It will most likely mean that the pictures were taken with a lot more. I was more thoughtful about lots of those images. Not that I'm not thoughtful about taking pictures, but there are some times where I feel pressure and I do take a couple more than I need just to make sure I got the shot. And I would like to just be a little bit more confident that I got the shot. So just kind of personal goals. I think overall it would mean, I'm all about quality over quantity. So I would like to feel like I'm getting his shots right out of camera, straight out of camera, and being more confident about every shot that I take. So.
And your keeper rate may be if someone has a very low keeper rate, it might not necessarily mean that they're taking 1 million pictures and only having a couple good ones. It might mean that their standards are very, 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 very high.
Very high, right. And like on vacation pictures, when we go on vacation, my keeper rate is even lower than weddings because I take a lot more freedom and take way more shots even because I know that they're just my own. So or I have time to be a little bit more of a perfectionist, and so I take a billion more pictures to try to get the right one. So yeah, so my keeper rate is actually lower for personal images.
Right. And then I think for family and stuff, my keeper rate often might be a little bit higher because even though that's not a technically wonderful picture, it captures a moment that's special to me.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. This is a good stopping point because we're almost at 29 minutes. So we're going to come back and talk a little bit of news.
Okay. Did you have to say that?
No. All right, so we got 2 items for news this week. And the first that I wanted to talk about was rumors. Well, first we've heard on the Canon side that 7D Mark II rumor that it's just been floating forever and ever now have a May mention date for a new DSLR from Canon. Everybody's crossing fingers and hoping it's a 7D Mark II. 7D is a much loved tank-like high-performance crop sensor camera. And I still get questions 7D versus 70D. I don't really see any reason to buy the 7D over the 70D these days. 70D really is a nice performance, except for that center focus point issue, which I'm just hoping Canon just magically fixes all of it soon. But I will talk more about that. But it also could be a T6i at that date in May. And we don't know.
It would be around that time, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that is when. And of course, that question we asked a couple podcasts ago, do we think dual pixel focus technology will be in the T6i? Do we wonder if it'll be in the 7D Mark II? I have to say it's going to be. It's going to be a higher camera than the 70D. I think it would be included. And on the Nikon side, I think this is interesting. This makes me think that maybe that May date will be the 7D Mark II because now we're starting to hear rumors of a D9300 from Nikon. And for those of you shooting Nikon and paying attention, you'd say, well, was there ever a D9200, 9100, 9000? No, there never was. But the rumor is, or the thought is that they want to kind of keep the naming conventions with their current D33, D5300, D7100. We're not quite to 7300 yet there. And this D9300 would be an icon equivalent of the 7D Mark II, probably. Kind of a successor to the much-loved D300 and D300S, which was a very high-performance crop sensor camera.
I thought those were full frame.
They were not. They were crop sensor.
Oh, the D700s.
D700 and the D4.
Yep, got it.
Yeah. So we'll see. Just that bit of news. You know, it's kind of fun to think and wonder, but honestly, the best thing you can do is take the camera you have, walk outside, and start taking some pictures. Don't get too caught up in rumors. Don't get too caught up in should I wait, should I wait. So, yeah. And then you had a little piece of news you wanted to talk about?
Sort of. Well,
Sort of? You only sort of wanted to talk about it?
No, I mean, well, we saw it while looking through Instagram. And it was a post by, or maybe it was just on a news website. I don't even remember where we saw it.
Do you follow Lorde on Instagram?
I do, yeah. Oh. So it was posted that, I guess it was spoken about in third person.
I wonder if she knows about my Instagram rules. Does she only do 5 tags or
I
less?
don't believe she does any hashtags. She's way cooler. She's too cool for hashtags. So.
Too cool for hashtags.
So, well, what she posted was 2 pictures. One photo with both of her concert, same concert. And one of the pictures, all of her blemishes were removed. Her face was really smooth. And the second picture was her with blemishes on her face and just, you know, natural, unretouched photo. So I think that the article that posted it was just kind of raising the question of how much is too much Photoshop. And I thought it was kind of respectable or admirable that she, you know, being a teenage girl herself and having this
I'm
audience.
Sorry, did you say that she posted it?
She did post it,
yes.
But it was talked about by, we didn't find it on her Instagram feed. We found it on a website that reposted it.
Okay.
But she did post it. She posted it herself on her Instagram feed.
Showing a untouched or unretouched picture.
Yeah.
With blemishes.
Yeah, and then one without blemishes.
Okay.
Just showing that, you know, she's a real human being with blemishes and with imperfections. So anyway, we just kind of wanted to open up the discussion of how much Photoshop do you think is too much Photoshop?
Well, I mean, ask you as a photographer of many women, many on their very special day where they want to look their absolute best. How do you decide what is too much?
Well, I feel like throughout my photography career, I feel like my mindset about that has kind of changed a little bit. Everyone, if you look at articles that tell you about how to retouch pictures and, you know, the fashion industry, fashion photography industry, and magazines and all of that, the standard is that you should retouch blemishes, retouch imperfections, stray hairs, and things like that.
Oh, I mean, when you say the standard is perfection,
the standard is absolutely perfection. But it's not perfection. It's more of like this preconceived idea of what perception or what perfection should be. So anyway, so they tell you to make people look their best. And I work with, not to say that, you know, anybody who's in a fashion magazine isn't a real person, because they absolutely are, but, you know, they're usually probably pretty attractive, you know, just without even being retouched. And then on top of that, they get retouched. So, you know, I work with women who aren't models, who aren't celebrities, who, you know, don't have to work out every day, who don't have to, you know, like, I mean, they get makeup and hair done, but, so, yeah, I mean, I correct things that are distracting in the photo, but I think more and more I'm kind of just trying to be really conscious about not making it look super fake, which I think that a lot of people do make things look super fake, and that just looks bad. It's not even, but yeah, I mean, I wonder if I should just leave some of the blemishes on, just because I feel like, you know, the more people see real people with blemishes, the more it's going to become an acceptable thing, which is, you know, something that's true. Like we all have, nobody's perfect. We all have imperfections. So anyway, so yeah, that's just kind of like a philosophical sort of thing that I've started to really think about and consider when I'm retouching my own work. And yeah, I mean,
could you elaborate on what you think might be? You said, you know, you'll remove something if it's distracting.
Right, like so like a bra strap sticking out would be really distracting. Or I mean, I think that if the bride asked me to remove a particular thing that really bothers her, then I would absolutely, you know, fulfill that request. But in terms of me deciding that something, oops, I just touched the microphone. In terms of me deciding that something about this person isn't, you know, flattering enough to be in the photo, I think that I'm probably just going to be a little bit less, you know, judgmental. Is that the right word? They're just, people are who they are and they look the way that they look. And, you know, I think that.
And we love them, flaws and all.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, we want to hear from you.
Yeah, we'd like to hear from you about retouching. And I've asked that question before, and I actually posed that when I was doing the Lightroom, not about people, but scenery. Removing phone lines, you know, man-made objects from a beautiful scenic view to make it seem more wild. Do you think that's acceptable?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think as long as you're not, like, obviously if you're not a photojournalist or claiming to be a photojournalist and submitting it, they have specific rules that you should follow in terms of retouching. So if you're not violating any rules of photojournalism or anything, I mean, it's your work. You can do whatever you want with it. But when it comes to people, it's a little bit different.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Really living up to its name of Mish Mash tonight, I remembered something that I wanted to talk about from a few weeks ago, and that is about asking people when you want to take a picture.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't mean like, you know, being polite, but I mean like if you're thinking about making a picture, like for instance, when I was doing the road trip stuff with the Lumoid gear and I wandered out on the ice, there was this kind of rough-looking, burly fisherman out there on the ice. And I could see he was watching me. He was kind of peering through the window of his shack when he went inside for a little while, and then he came back out. And he's really watching me. And I thought, you know, he's grumpy. I'm out here on the ice too or something. But I think he was either, one, making sure that I didn't fall through the ice and need any help, or two, that I wasn't going to mess with his traps. He was just keeping an eye on me. Because he turned out to be a really nice guy. And I went over and started talking to him. And then I thought, you know, he looks great. He's kind of this, he looks a little mountain man-ish, and he's wearing these great, you know, radio earphones. He's bundled up. He's got a big white beard, and I thought it'd be nice to take his picture. And you know, it's very easy for me at weddings because I'm clearly there to take people's pictures, to say, oh, let's, you know, I'm going to take your picture, or people just expect you to be taking your picture. But when you're out just kind of traveling and stuff, I think it's a lot harder. And that was actually one of my, this is a secret. This is the first time I'm revealing this. One of my, I'm not sure I even told you.
Oh boy.
One of my New Year's resolutions was to be better about taking pictures of people if I wanted to. Say, I'd like to take your picture, would you mind? And so I said to him, would you mind if I took your picture? And he was like, oh no. And this was after I talked to him a minute about what he was fishing for, because I was interested. And he was like, not at all. And I took a picture, and there's one where he starts to half smile, and it's up on my Instagram. And I really like that picture. Then I also got to take, I should have gotten his name so I could have shared these pictures with him, because he probably would have liked to see them as well.
Yeah. And I actually, while we were in Washington, I overheard you talking with the owner of a glass shop, and you asked to take his picture, and he totally rejected your request.
Oh, I wanted to take a picture of the glass decorations in the front.
But you wanted him to be in the picture?
Yeah. I did, yes, but he wasn't the subject. Well, yeah, okay, sorry.
Okay. No, it's fine. I guess I misunderstood that exchange, but...
Yeah. I got shot down.
Right.
Right.
So he wouldn't let you take pictures of the glass?
No, because the artists, the artist didn't want their... Which I was like, you know, I'm going to put it out. I'm famous on Instagram, man. Not really, but... I keep saying I am. I want to be. No. But the other great example was flying out west. That when we were traveling a few weeks ago, I realized the cockpit door was open as we were on the layover. Realized the cockpit door was open, and it looks so cool in there, in the inside of the 747-500 series, maybe. And I thought, I want to take a picture. And I was like, oh, I feel a little dumb. I feel a little shy. I'm a grown man. I want to take a picture inside. And I'm like, I want to take a picture. I'm going to ask to take the picture. I walk up there. I say, would you mind if I took a picture? And the guy's like, sit down in the seat and help me do the pre-flight checklist.
Every man boy's dream, or boy man.
Boy man's dream. So it was awesome. Not only did I get to sit in the seat and take some pictures, I got to touch things, push buttons. I literally put in the altitude of our destination airport. I put in the waypoints that we were going to fly through on the way, 4 of them. It was really a cool experience, and I asked. And I'm telling you all these stories because I want you to ask. When you're taking pictures out there and there's something you want to take a picture of, ask. The worst that can happen is that they say no, and you say, thank you, and walk away. Yep.
And expect it to happen. And, you know, I think in the grand scheme of things, you probably will be told yes more times than you'll be told no. So,
right.
Just try it.
Good. Yep. And I also just was going to say that, you know, when I first started out in photography, I really said I was a landscape photographer, nature photography, because that's kind of, I'm going to say it's easier to do. It's not easier to make beautiful landscape pictures, but it's easier to say you're that thing because you can just walk outside and click.
You don't have to ask
click,
nature.
Click. That's right. Tree, do you mind? But I feel like people are really interesting subjects.
I agree.
And well, this is a great case in point. I was thinking about this today. Is you were totally willing, Miss Anti-Crooked Horizon, on this last, it was actually on the second critique, wasn't it?
Yes.
Totally Crooked Horizon, but it's a cool portrait of a person capturing a moment. That was Brian's picture of the man on the bench.
I like that picture a lot.
You did not give one hoot.
No.
That the horizon was crooked. I was like, the horizon's crooked? You're like, it's fine. Look at that. It's a great picture.
Well, it was all about content. It was all about content. And I know pictures are about content, but there are some pictures where
a horizon
is a lot more important. Like a straight horizon is a lot more important. So I just,
Did you know that the crooked horizon has a name?
No, I didn't. I should know that because I talk about it enough.
Well, you're like I think it's the Dutch horizon. I have no idea if I'm saying it right now. I think it's called the Dutch horizon or the Dutch effect.
Okay. Where did that come from?
No idea.
All right, we'll have to look it up.
So we pause the video and then come back and pretend we're really knowledgeable about the Dutch horizon.
Let's just move on.
All right. So I think that was no, that's not it, because we do have reader questions.
Yeah.
A reader question. There was one other on the Flickr page. But, so the question about the keeper rate came from the Flickr page. I love that people are starting discussions there. There's been a couple of neat discussions. Spend some time over there. And also we'll come back and recap the symmetry thing in a minute. The one reader question I have is kind of a specific one, but I think it ties back into the whole idea of focus points and things like that.
Yeah.
So here it is.
Mm-hmm.
I need advice. I have the Canon 70D. I want to take early morning, low light, large group photos of runners. What would the best mode be? I took a few test shots this AM, found that the autofocus tends to focus on the wrong runner.
Well, I think you guys probably know what my answer is. The best mode is manual mode.
M on the dial.
Yeah, and everything else. Well, if you're trying to highlight a runner, like one particular runner, for example, because you're just trying to close in on this person, and you want to use an auto mode, like an auto focus point mode, you can use servo mode and then have the camera help you focus on the runner. But other than that, I think everything else should probably be manual because you should have full control over what the picture looks like. You can control your ISO for low light, you can control your shutter speed, you can control your aperture. So that's my 2 cents.
I'm just watching the cat trying to make as much noise as possible any second now. He's like, hey, I haven't bothered you yet, this podcast. Here, let me climb into this box full of noisy things.
He's eyeing a box. Oh, there he goes.
So I think let's step back from this scenario and think about breaking it down to your steps or your elements and taking a picture. Oh, it made me think of one other thing I was going to talk about tonight. That's okay. So, first thing you got to do is decide, I think in this case, shutter speed. It's your first step. What it's not clear to me, are these large groups of runners after they finished putting their arms around each other saying, hey, we just ran a race, or are these large groups of runners running by? Either way, you got to pick a shutter speed that's going to make sure that everybody's in sharp focus. The faster the movement, the higher your shutter speed needs to be. Question I had the other day when somebody watched one of my focal length videos about making sure your shutter speed was at least twice your focal length, basically, to get sharp pictures and avoid handshake, was why not put your shutter speed way high up? Why not?
Because then your picture gets darker.
Because your picture gets darker. And so then you either need to counteract that by opening up your aperture, and you may not be able to open it anymore past a certain point, or raising your ISO really high.
Right.
Which gives you noisy pictures.
Try some panning or something, you know?
Oh, don't get, that's too complicated right now.
Sorry.
Okay. All right, so first, pick a shutter speed that's going to freeze the action on these runners. Then, look at your aperture. Are you at your maximum aperture? You probably don't want to be at your maximum aperture. You probably want to stop down a little bit to make sure that if they're moving and your depth of field is a little bit bigger than it would be otherwise, to make sure that you're not moving in and out of your focus area. And then you want to look at where your exposure meter is. Is it sitting way over here in complete black land, or is it way overexposed? And adjust your ISO to center it. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. It's not rocket science or anything magical. It's just kind of stepping up to a scene and saying, what's my priority here first? And in this case, I think it's going to be shutter speed to make sure you're freezing the action.
Yep.
And then setting your other settings, adjusting your other settings, to not repeat myself, to what's most appropriate.
Right, yeah. And I think I forgot what I was going to add to that. But yeah, that's exactly how you should approach a scene.
Right. And if you find yourself in astronomically high ISOs, then maybe you do want to go ahead and risk opening your aperture a little bit wider if you can, or slowing your shutter speed a little bit if you can. So, yeah. Test shots, test shots, test shots. Got a friend, got a wife, girlfriend that you can have run back and forth in the backyard to test. It's just going to be practicing that's going to give you an idea of how well this will work.
And the more you do it, the more natural it will become. You will stop thinking too much about your settings, and you'll start adjusting them more quickly based on the available light. You become more aware of what your starting settings should be.
Right. Who out there can drive a manual or a stick shift? I think when you first start, you really have to think about how much you're putting the clutch in, how much you're letting off the gas.
Or just driving a car in general.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, eventually that becomes second nature. You don't really think about it. And that just took practice.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Great.
Just like driving a car.
Just like driving a car. Except it makes pictures instead of pollution.
You took that in a weird direction.
And on that note, let's wrap up. Let's summarize. You have a symmetry assignment. Yes. There's already been a couple pictures uploaded and tagged.
Cool.
Blog post right down below. There is a giveaway. Dang it, I just made myself have to put that back in again. And I think that's it.
Yep.
Thank you so much for watching this Mish Mash. If you have topics, questions, suggestions for future videos, and remember, if you would really like to see live, leave a comment down below. And, you know, I hate those mysterious Facebook posts, you know, that your friends do from high school that are like, oh my God, I can't believe that just happened. You know, things like that.
Yeah.
I just want to put out there that big change is coming. That's all.
I don't even know what that means, so there you go.
I'm going to shave my head for the next. No. Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye. What does that mean?